US 322. Yeah. All right, it's opening day for baseball, so we're talking US 322 because it goes through Cleveland and the Royals are starting off against the Guardians. It's a pretty interesting road, mostly through Pennsylvania, that ends with two concurrencies with much more famous roads. Let's take a look at the route. We start out in Cleveland and we end up in familiar environs in Atlantic City, crossing, as I said, mainly through Pennsylvania. We're going to start out by talking about Eastbound 322. So here we are in the central circle in Cleveland. We've been here before. We were here in a US 6 video. You can check that out over there. We are going to be starting by turning onto Superior Street along with US 6. So we are concurrent with US 6 to start. We get no sign for 6 or 322 here in the central square. Heading down Superior, we've got our first request. This is East 9th Street. This was requested by Andrew DeVore because it leads to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where he visited in June of 23 to celebrate his high school graduation. So thank you so much for that request. I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. It's a pretty cool spot. You could also turn right here on 9th Street to get to Jacobs Field, but that's not where the game is going to be, so I'm not going to bother showing it because the opening day game will be in Kaufman. Andrew requested that on the Patreon, and anybody with a Patreon membership can make requests for that as well. We've also got interesting stuff going on. We just had the Interstate Madness tournament running through the Patreon. Also request an exit the old-fashioned way, exit or point of interest with a $5 super thanks on any video. And I appreciate those of you who do that and the Patreon members. And, hey, the viewers, the subscribers. We continue down Superior until we get to 13th Street, and then we're going to be turning right, and the beginning of Independence 322 will begin right here. We go just a couple blocks down to Chester, and then we're going to be turning left to follow 322, although we have no sign for it, and Chester will be 322's route for a ways through Cleveland. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about highways and the places that they're assigned to go to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you really like it, why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. On Chester, we're going to be meeting I-90, and it's signed at 2 Ohio 2, but we don't get any control cities for 90 here. On I-90 itself, Chester Avenue is signed for Chester Avenue with no 322 shield, no mention of 322, so that's an interesting way to do it. When we get to Euclid Avenue, we are now going to be joining with US 20, the great US 20, and there will be videos on that at some point, don't worry. Right here, we pass right by Case Western Reserve University, and this was requested by Roadrunner because he is a 2008 graduate of this university. Thank you for that request. Appreciate that. Right here, we're going to be leaving Euclid and getting on Mayfield Road, and we will be leaving US 20 at this point. Once we're on Mayfield, we go through the Little Italy of Cleveland, and it's a pretty interesting looking spot. Here is a church that we pass by. Lovely looking neighborhood. In Little Italy, we pass by Mama Santa's, and this was requested by Daniel Dobish. He says it's got great chow, and he went on a date with his wife there many years ago. They are 15 years married now, so congratulations to you. Looks like an awesome place, and thank you for that request. We leave the city of Cleveland and enter Cleveland Heights, so shout out Travis Kelce. Here we intersect with North Taylor Road, and this was requested by Roadrunner because his aunt and uncle live just off of it, so thank you for that request. Another request from Roadrunner, this is Yellowstone Road, because his grandparents lived off of it, and he used to frequent the Severance Town Center, which is just across the street from right here. So thank you for that request. And I'm glad I'm getting a lot of Cleveland requests in, since this is something of a Cleveland video, being that it's about opening day and playing Cleveland. Right here we meet 271. I did a video on 271 not too long ago. You can check out over here. And we are signed for Columbus southbound and Cleveland and Erie, PA northbound. On 271, we see 322 is signed for Mayfield Heights in one direction, that's just beyond Cleveland Heights, and Mayfield Road Gates Mills in our direction. So Gates Mills becomes our next control city. And here is Gates Mills. Looks like it's just kind of a suburban area here. Probably something else they could have signed over that, but I guess coming off the interstate, it is what's in the immediate area. We are in Chesterland, and we are meeting Ohio 366, and we are signed for Orwell, 25 miles away. Ohio 11 is a freeway between I-90 and Youngstown, and we pass by that soon before heading to PA. And we see on Ohio 11, 322 is signed for Orwell, which we already passed through, and Jamestown, PA will become our next control city. Welcome to Pennsylvania. They don't give us much of a sign, but this is the best that we got for a welcome to Pennsylvania thing. We do get a Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful to remind us that we are in Pennsylvania. And in Jamestown, we are going to be making a left turn. This is kind of not the true route of 322 because 322 makes kind of this weird turn up to Connie Lake, which makes it so it's a road that nobody would ever drive from end to end because you could have taken US 6 there and gotten there faster. So that becomes our next control city. Here in Connie Lake, we are becoming concurrent with US 6. In Meadville, we will separate from US 6. 322 will head east Park Avenue, East 6 and North US 19 are going to veer to the left. Coming out of Meadville, Franklin will become our next primary control city. And here we are in Franklin, we're meeting US 62. It's a fine looking town here, and we will be concurrent with US 62 for a little bit. Right here is where we are going to split from US 62. 62 will turn left, we will go straight. Cross the Allegheny River, and now Clarion will become our next control city. Clarion being a control city on I-80 is a big problem, but Clarion being a control city on US 322 is just fine. Here is Central Clarion, pretty cool looking park that we drive by right here, and we see I-80 toward the right. Our next control city after Clarion is going to be Brookville. We're meeting I-80, signed ever so greatly for Du Bois and Sharon. And in Brookville, we are now going to be signed for Reynoldsville. Reynoldsville, 11 miles away, so not too far away. In Reynoldsville, Clearfield now becomes our most distant control city at 27 miles away. Pass through West Liberty along the way, and we meet US 119 there. We're still heading toward Clearfield, and US 219 will now become concurrent with us. In Lutherville, we see we are getting Clearfield and Ellensburg. Ellensburg, I assume, would be the control city for 219. In Lutherville, we will also separate from 219, and we will continue on our own. Here is Clearfield, and wow, that is a great looking place. These are really nice looking towns. Like I said in the US 6 video, some of these northern PA rural cities are really nice looking. In Clearfield, we are now going to be signed for Phillipsburg, so that will become our next control city. And now in Phillipsburg, we are getting State College 25 miles away, so getting to a more famous place here. 322 becomes a freeway as it approaches I-99. We are going to be east 322 to I-99 and north 220 State College, and we get a 2 south 99 the other way for Port Matilda. And I don't know why we're getting a 299 for the eastbound one because we are dumping right into 99. And here, in fact, is where we dump right onto US 99 northbound. We're going to separate from I-99 in the State College area. So we see Penn State University State College 322 East is what our controls will be. And right before we get our split, we're going to have an exit for Park Avenue for Beaver Stadium. Here is our final split with I-99, where we are finally signed for State College and Lewiston. We have the exit for Penn State, Innovation Park. Okay, Penn State. They finally innovated a running back. I wonder if they'll ever innovate a quarterback. Soon after separating from I-99, we get a junction with State 26 for State College. This was requested by Leo because he was born and raised in State College. And I understand it's a great place to live. I've never been, but I hear really good things. City Nerd always talks about it, so I'd like to check it out one day. And thank you for that request. Shortly after leaving State College, we pass right by this mountain pass, which runs along the Laurel Creek Reservoir. And this was requested by Olympian Product because he's gone up and down it many times. It's a really nice spot here, I'd say. Thank you for that request. Appreciate that. Continuing on the US 322 freeway out of State College up to Harrisburg, we are now getting an exit for Burnham. And this was requested by Leo because there's a pizza restaurant called Vince's that he loves to go to anytime he's in the area, located just off this exit. Thank you so much for that request. Appreciate that. We're meeting the mothership here, US 22, our parent route, West 22 and South 522 signed for Mount Union, and we are now signed for Harrisburg, along with 522 and 22. A whole lot of 22s in this area. 422 is not too far either. 522 will leave us as Walnut Street, so now we will just be 22 and 322. And we can see this stretch from State College to Harrisburg mostly acts as a freeway, but it's not quite like an interstate standard freeway, as we can see by this at-grade railroad crossing. It is really nice scenery on this freeway as we head through central Pennsylvania. Meeting a couple big roads here, US 11, US 15, Selinsgrove, and Camp Hill right here. And I've got to do an overhead picture of that interchange because it's a wild looking interchange. It looks pretty normal from the street view, but looking at it here, it is a pretty complex interchange that they've put together here. Right here, we're crossing over the Susquehanna River, and now we're going to be meeting I-81. I-81 sign south for Carlisle, because you should really sign suburbs on a road like I-81. We are getting signs for 81 North, East 322, and 2 I-83. US 22 is also going to be leaving us for Harrisburg. Here is the beginning of I-83, so we will split off of I-81, which is going to take you to I-78 as well. I-83 is signed for Hershey and York, along with East 322 and 2 Pennsylvania Turnpike, because you can get to that this way as well. We're not on I-83 for very long before we leave it, so now we are getting 322 east for Hershey and Eisenhower Boulevard. 83 will continue south for Harrisburg and York, and then there's also 283 headed toward I-76, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. As we exit, we are set to be East 322 Hershey, quarter mile, and you can still stay on 83 south. It's a wild looking interchange. 283 South and Paxson Street exit here to get back on 83. We continue on 322 East for Hershey. We're meeting US 422 now, and we are going to be signed 322 East for Ephrata, and this is the exit for Hershey Park and those attractions coming up here as well. This was requested by TheDerpHog because he has been on 422 in this area from Hershey to I-83. Thank you so much for that request. We cross right over the Pennsylvania Turnpike, I-76, but we do not have an interchange for it. Well, we saw 22, 522, and 422. Now it's time to meet 222, which is signed for Reading and Lancaster. From 222's perspective, we are going to be meeting 322 and turning right for Blue Ball. Great name. We have already passed through Ephrata at this point. Here in Blue Ball, we are now going to be signed for Honeybrook. And now in Honeybrook, we're getting the next town over. Downington will be our control city, 13 miles away. Just before Downington, we are meeting US 30, the great US 30, and US 30 is a freeway at this point. We see coming off of US 30 that 322 is signed Honeybrook, the way we came from, and for Westchester will be our next control city. In Westchester, we veer off for US 322 East Chester and US 202 South Wilmington, as we're meeting US 202 here as well. We're meeting US 1, and we are splitting with US 202. We're going to be joining US 1, and we're signed for Concordville 1 now instead of Chester. And now we split with US 1, and we go back to being signed for Chester, so I guess that Concordville was a US 1 thing. We dead end into I-95. We're joining northbound I-95, and we're signed for Commodore Barry Bridge for 322 and Philadelphia for I-95. And shortly after getting on to 95, now we are assigned Commodore Barry Bridge for New Jersey. Not going to give us a control city, just a state, just New Jersey. All of New Jersey is on the other side of the Delaware River, and we know where that river is, so that's not really too helpful. PA sticks to their guns, though. Once we get to the Commodore Barry Bridge, we are still getting 322 East New Jersey. On the Commodore Barry Bridge, we are crossing over the city of Chester. We can see it down below us. And here's what it looks like on the Commodore Barry Bridge on its main span as we cross the Delaware River. On the New Jersey side, they're telling us 295, Atlantic City Expressway, and New Jersey Turnpike follow 322 East. Although from this point, we have to follow 322 East. We're going to be meeting US 130 shortly, and 132 I-295 North exits in 3/4 of a mile. We pass by the toll facility. We have no toll heading into New Jersey. It's always toll to get out of New Jersey. We've got a couple of signs approaching the 130 intersection, and they're a little bit weird. So we got 130 South Penns Grove, North 130, 244, and 295 for Trenton, East 322 to 295 for Glassboro. That is the first section of control cities that we are getting for this interchange, and this was requested by Boss King Inc. He wanted to see this because the control cities and the font is not the best, so thank you for that request. Boss King Inc. also wanted to see the next sign along the way where we are getting different control cities. Now we're getting North 130 for Camden instead of for Trenton. And thank you to Boss King Inc. for that request. Boss King Inc. also thinks that they should have mentioned the New Jersey Turnpike heading in this direction because it's the most important road in New Jersey. I actually don't think it's so important to mention the Jersey Turnpike when you mention that there, because you could take 295 north and eventually hit over to the Jersey Turnpike if you're going to New York, or you can take 295 south and that becomes the Jersey Turnpike going to Wilmington. So either way, you're going to save some cash. You're probably better off on 295 than the Jersey Turnpike anyway. When we get to actual 295, we're not getting much. We just get this 295 exit right here. And here is 295 North's perspective of 322. So we see East 322 to the New Jersey Turnpike, Mullica Hill, and 322 West Bridgeport and Commodore Barry Bridge. Further down the road on 322, we get our exit for the New Jersey Turnpike, and all they're giving us is NJ Turnpike. From the New Jersey Turnpike perspective, we are getting 322 for Swedesboro and Glassboro. So Glassboro does somewhat remain there consistently. I don't know why 295 was going with Mullica Hill instead when everything else is Glassboro. Mullica Hill also, I think, is not incorporated anyway. Coming off of the Jersey Turnpike, we are getting Glassboro, turn right. After the Jersey Turnpike, now we are getting Mullica Hill, Williamstown, and Atlantic City straight ahead. But Glassboro has gone away. And on New Jersey 55, 322 is signed east for Glassboro, west for Richwood, Mullica Hill. So these are all kind of dartboard throws. I feel like New Jersey's just kind of putting up whatever they think of at the time, not paying attention to anything that's ever been put up before. In Glassboro, we are finally getting East 322 Atlantic City, which will be our final control city. And in Williamstown, still 322 East Atlantic City. Colin Boyle requested the Olive Garden in Mays Landing. This is right before we meet up with US 40 because he went there once on a trip to Wildwood. So thank you for that request. Colin also wants to mention that he enjoys that the final run of 40 322 once we are with 40 is called the Black Horse Pike. He likes it because it reminds him of the Katy Perry song Dark Horse. Thanks for that request. We're meeting US 40. US 40 is signed west for Mays Landing, and we will be signed Atlantic City straight ahead, of course. Honestly, this should be the end of 322. I still don't see any reason to extend 322 along the rest of the route because it just rides along with US 40 and then ends in the same spot. And maybe New Jersey knows it too, because right now we're just getting two, not one, but two different East 40 signs and no 322 signs. Although right here we're seeing 322 shown on there again along with East 40. This sign should mention the Garden State Parkway. I don't know why they don't. Right here is where we meet US 9, so we are getting close to AC now. Crossing over one of the bridges, and we can see a view of some of the Atlantic City skyline. And we cross the last bridge to head into Atlantic City proper. And here is Ventnor Avenue, the famed yellow property from Monopoly. This is the end of US 322 and of US 40. But we'll get to the actual boardwalk here, and boardwalk beats Ventnor Avenue anyway, right? So if you continue straight from that point, you do eventually get to the boardwalk for Atlantic City. Let's turn around and go westbound. But for westbound, I'm only going to focus on Todd's the way it should be westbound cities. I'm not going to look at everything along the way. I'm just going to look at the signs that highlight what I think we should be signing. So starting at Atlantic City High School, it is West 322 and 40 to Pleasantville, and I think that should be the first control city for both of those. I love that 322 and 40 are completely different shields here, that they put 40 as a New Jersey highway shield. What are they learning at Atlantic City High School? At our split with US 40, 322 is signed for Camden. And no, that's not Todd's the way it should be. I'm just showing it because it's ridiculous. 322 doesn't go to Camden. If you stay on this Black Horse Pike, it will take you to Camden, but 322 won't. When we leave the Black Horse Pike, or whatever it's called locally in these parts, 322 is signed for Glassboro. And that is in Williamstown, and we can see this signage was from a jug handle. Just beyond the intersection, right by that Geets Diner and Bar, there is a jug handle where people turning left will be going. After Glassboro, I think signing Commodore Barry Bridge. Pennsylvania, you could sign it for Chester. I understand not signing it for Chester, but signing it for just Pennsylvania is a little silly. Pennsylvania and New Jersey only signing the states on either side is definitely a bit provincial. Here is our toll booth going over to the Commodore Barry Bridge, and 95 to 476 Philadelphia, Wilmington. So sign us for Wilmington because we're concurrent with 95. And here is the exit for Chester, which is theoretically where we would be signed to. 95 South, West 322 for Wilmington and Westchester. 95 should be signed for Baltimore, and 322 Westchester is just fine. In Westchester, 322 signed Downingtown is correct. And from Downingtown, I think Ephrata should be our next control city after Downingtown, just because you can't sign anything further because there's faster ways to get there. From Ephrata, Harrisburg should be our control city, and it mostly is. Hershey, we skirt against Hershey. I understand why they're signing it, but Harrisburg should definitely be the primary control. And here is another West 322 of just Harrisburg with no Hershey. Coming out of Harrisburg, State College should be our primary control. They throw in Lewiston in both directions, but I think you could just go State College because it's more or less a freeway and they are somewhat major cities. Coming out of State College, I think Clearfield should be our control city. And then coming out of Clearfield, Brookville should be our control city. Coming out of Brookville, Clarion should be our control city. And after Clarion, we should have Franklin as our control city, so I think that is well done there. Coming out of Franklin, I would go with Meadville for our next control city. And then Connie Lake, I could kind of have because we're concurrent with US 6 for there, but it's a really small town. So ultimately, I would say Jamestown should be our control city coming out of Meadville because that's 322s. Jamestown is a really small town as well, but you can't just go to Cleveland yet because this is not the fastest way to Cleveland because of the weird routes that they have US highways go through in this part of Pennsylvania and Ohio. After Jamestown, I would say Cleveland should be our next control city. All right, so let's head back to Cleveland. We go right by the Cleveland Art Museum, which looks pretty cool. I definitely wish I would have checked that out when I was in Cleveland the one time, but I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame instead, and that was cool too. Here is where we get back to Superior. US 6 will become concurrent with us. US 322 is actually signed right here. It is not signed in the other direction, so we are turning left to continue on US 322 along with US 6. And finally, we get back to the center circle of Cleveland, and that shall end US 322, but US 6 shall continue. All right, let's take a look at Todd's the way it should be for US 322. I'm going to say Eastbound, Cleveland Heights, Chesterfield, Orwell, Meadville, Franklin, Clarion, Brookville, Clearfield, State College, Harrisburg, Hershey, Ephrata, Downington, Westchester, Chester, Glassboro, Atlantic City. Westbound, just what I showed you on the westbound portion of this video. Those are the ones that should be the control cities. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. We have got our results show of our Interstate Madness, which will come next week. That is still ongoing, so it's still possible to vote. So if you want to do an interstate shout out on whatever your favorite road is, you can do that with a $5 super thanks. Just to have your name read and your favorite interstate. And the week after that, Royals are going to Minnesota, and so are we, to look at 394 2 weeks from now. Although exit requests for that are no longer open. 278 the week after that, though, is wide open. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. Until next time, my name is Todd, and keep on trucking.